Welcome back to the Pickle Pulse. I am your host, Brian Green, and I have a treat for you. We've got the one and only, the GOAT, Mr. Kyle Yates. I don't want to say in the house because he's in his house somewhere far, far away from here. But what's up, Kyle? How are you, dude?
I'm great, Brian. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
I feel like I don't need to introduce you, but you're like four-time U.S. Open champion, national world champion. Like, you were the guy forever and ever and ever and still are. So
yeah,
my question,
who's counting? Who's counting?
Yeah. Well, my question is, I haven't seen your beautiful face on any streams yet this year, and I'm just dying to root for one of my favorite players. When are we going to get to see you back out on the court again?
Tune in for U.S. Open as actually my next tournament. But yeah, I've taken a little bit of a break for the last few months and this year, just kind of reprioritizing a lot of things. So not really playing as much, and so I can't really justify going and playing a tournament right now. But I'm definitely itching to get back out there at some point.
Oh, yeah. Well, I know you still got it, regardless of how much you're playing. So you're doing a lot on the business side of things. So what kind of stuff are you? I know you've got your PB placations that you're doing.
Yeah, I love the vacation trips. A lot more teaching this year and open up a few facilities out in Colorado, some indoor facilities. So yeah, just focusing on different things besides just hitting the ball all day, every day.
Yeah, no, I get that. And you've been doing it for a long, long time. So it's
I've hit a lot of wiffle balls.
So what do you think of the new wiffle ball, the Vulcan ball that's out there? Have you played with it a bit?
I've only got to play with it a few times. Obviously, I've got a lot of friends that are still on tour, so I get their opinion. They play with it more than I have. But it's funny with all the new technology in pickleball and all the new paddles and things over the years. We still use relatively the same ball that we've been using for the last 15 years. I mean, the Durafast 40 was used at nationals back in 2011.
Oh,
So
wow.
I think it's time for people to start innovating with the ball. There's a lot of companies trying out there right now, so I'm sure someone will come up with something really good soon.
Yeah, no, I hope so. And I've played with the Vulcan, and I feel like it's a little bit faster X40 when it's cold outside. Uh,
That's
the
fair.
the biggest issue, and what I've heard from a lot of people around, is that it goes out of round really quickly, and it creates some weird bounces. But the Dura sort of did the same thing, just not quite as fast.
Well, a ball needs to bounce straight. It needs to be consistent. That's, I think, the most important thing for a lot of the pro players. I can't really speak for the amateur players, but the consistency of the ball is huge. We want something that you can just get right out of the package and start playing with. We need it to last a little bit longer than a couple games, and it needs to bounce straight.
Yeah.
Personally,
or at least the way that you're putting spin on it.
sure, right.
So you can sort of anticipate it. So I want to talk a little bit about this past weekend. I don't know if you watched any of this past weekend or not, but your boy Andre Daescu is a beast. I mean,
Tell me something I don't know.
you got to play next to him, and just to watch him and Gabe Tardio kind of plow through some of the best teams in the world was, I don't want to say shocking because I've sort of seen it coming, but it was cool to watch.
It was. I wasn't surprised. I'm actually a big fan of Gabe Tardio's game as well, but I've known Andre for a long time. I'm actually pretty sure that I hit with him the first time he's ever touched the paddle in Florida, and I've seen his progression. But the guy's had some big wins the last year. I mean, he had a big MLP win last year. I got to play with him at the U.S. Open. It was about time that he got to shine on a PPA Tour event. I know a lot of people, since he doesn't play a lot of PPA events, I think people look at him as kind of a slightly lower tier from those top guys. But I mean, he's right up there with those Riley Newmans and Ben Johnses. He just doesn't get to show it as much. I'd like to see him with a really good female, and because he's a great mixed doubles player.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't play a ton of singles, but he's a great singles player. He just doesn't really want to grind. But it was only a matter of time for him to really step up and show what he's got in a PPA event. I think we'll see more of him.
Yeah, and I agree, and I thought he was top 10 player, male player in the world before this. He's just one of those guys that can really take over the court, and he's so long. How tall is he? Like 6'5"?
I want to say he's 6'4", but he uses it really well. But the thing with Andre, he's always been very steady, doesn't make a lot of mistakes, plays really smart, and he's got the reach. But up until recently, I want to say until the last year and a half or so, hand speed was a liability, and he didn't have a ton of power. He just got a lot of balls back, and he had reach. But now that, I mean, some of his hand speed, I mean, some of those points that he had with like JW and Dylan in the finals, JW and Dylan have the fastest hands I've ever seen, and Gabe and Andre were right there with him for a lot of those rallies. And Andre's starting to get more offensive, and so adding that part to his game really brought it all together.
Yeah, I was actually sad to see that they had to face JW and Dylan in the finals, only because, well, we had watched them kind of plow through the Johns, through Riley and Thomas, and the hands battles were unbelievable in those matches. And then they get to Gabe's like best boys, who he trains with all the time, and
Sure.
they know his game left, right, up and down, so he's not going to be able to pull that same stuff to get through those guys. And
Sure. Yeah, well, Andre, I'm sure plays with J Dub over there too quite a bit. I mean, he's in like Palm Beach area as well. So you got all those East Coast Florida guys. Dylan goes out there and trains with them a bunch. So yeah, they all know each other's games so much. But I think you see that a lot on the pro tour. Everyone plays each other so often. It's really just execution in critical moments in those tournaments that makes the difference.
Yeah. Well, have you seen Andre's new proton paddle? Have you felt it or played with
I
it?
haven't hit with it. It's pretty looking,
Yeah.
colorful.
Well, it's crazy. The material that's on the face feels rubbery almost, and
Really?
it's so different than any other paddle out there. And a friend of mine got one, and he's been playing with it, and the spin that's coming off of it is unbelievable too.
It must be a decent paddle. I mean, he plays pretty well with it.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely am a fan. I actually wanted to get one until I picked it up and it felt like Thor's hammer in my weenie little noodle arm. It's so heavy. And I think he said on a pod that he weights it up to like 9.3 or 9.4 ounces. I mean, it's just wow.
Big, strong guy. He can handle it.
Yeah. So that leads to another question. I'm a paddle nerd, and so I could talk about that the whole time.
Literally from the wall behind you.
But you played with the Paddle Tech Bantam forever and ever and ever. I mean, it was a great paddle, and I want to say it still is, but the new tech that's out there is unbelievable. How has playing with a different paddle, the better technology, changed your game?
Oh, a number of ways. But yeah, I go back to the Paddletech Bantam. When I first started using the Bantam 2014, yeah, 2014, it was fairly new technology, the composite core, and it had this vinyl face on it. It just was a solid paddle. It hit hard, countered well. It was real consistent. But once those carbon fiber paddles came out and grittier paddles came out, people started getting more spin, dipping the ball a little more. The Bantam just wasn't grabbing as much. So I felt like I was at such a disadvantage. And I feel like I would still win hands battles. I was consistent, but I was lacking some of the shape on my shots that some of the other players were starting to get. And all these tennis players with these grittier paddles, they were just hitting higher quality shots. And I was consistent, but I needed to do more. I got a Valair in my hand from Julian Arnold,
Mm-hmm.
and it's the first time I'd ever used a carbon fiber paddle, and it was magic. I mean, the
Yeah, and
spin
you've
I was
got the
getting,
new
my
one.
dink.
Did you guys sell out of your pink version of your Valair? By the way, that's a good looking paddle.
Oh, they're gonna make some more. They're gonna make
Okay,
some
good.
more. It's a good looking paddle. Plays well. I'm happy with it. But yeah, I was finally able to start hitting a little bit more top spin on my dinks, on my third shot drops, things like that. So I was able to get a little more aggressive with certain shots. Started to incorporate a two-handed backhand. So my game is definitely, I would say, a lot more offensive than with my Bantam. My Bantam, I felt like I was more just consistent, counter punchy, and tricky. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like with my Volair, I'm able to speed up balls that normally I wouldn't have back in the day. And I think that's just evident with a lot of people. There's a lot more offense these days because of the paddle technology.
Yeah. Well, and I like it. I think for the consumer, the pickleball geek like myself, uh, the hands battles are way more fun to watch than 100 dinks. And
Yeah.
and I think that's why this past weekend was so exciting. Was one, I was rooting for Andre and Gabe because I'm like, let's go, 22 seed ripping through the pack. And but the other was the way that they were winning. Just every match was really fun to watch. And, there was one or two dinks and then let's fire away. And it was super cool to see.
Sure. Yeah. No, I loved watching them. I hope they play some more together. It might have been their first tournament together.
Yeah, I
So
think it
it's a
was.
pretty good result for a first date.
Yeah, not bad at all. So the other question that I think is on everyone's mind right now is, I know you're an MLP signed player, and it is just a total shit show right now, at least for the consumer who is excited to watch something really cool and get some hype. And, you know, have you heard from MLP? Have they sent you a check? Have they sent you a box of chocolate saying, we're sorry, we're just not doing this very well? Like, what's going on?
I actually did get a Happy Valentine's Day text message, but we're not really getting any updates. I know that they're still working on the PPA MLP merger, so a lot rides on that. I'm nervous. MLP was so much fun. I know all the players really enjoyed it. That was evident by all the signings. You saw a lot of players supporting MLP, but it's one of those things now where they've already canceled the first event of the year. It doesn't seem like there's a real plan for the rest of the year, so it's really kind of up in the air right now. So I don't have a lot of information on it. I don't think it's looking very promising, unfortunately. I hope they figure something out. But in the meantime, I'm really not holding my breath.
Yeah. Yeah. And the worst thing about it is, the longer that they do this, the more irrelevant it becomes. People are already like, who cares? Let's move on. But that's not the way I feel. I loved MLP and I want to see more of it. My other question would be like, how about APP? Or maybe they come in with some sort of team format. And since you guys haven't been paid yet, you can just say, okay, we'll play the APP and create some sort of new thing, scoop up underneath it.
Yeah, well, PPA is got enough money that they're just going to keep doing their thing. APP seems to be just chugging along on their own. I think you'll see some sort of all-star event pop up pretty soon. I think if the merger doesn't go through, PPA will find a way to fill that niche. I think MLP, I think their mindset was, we can be the main format of the sport. And I think they're starting to realize that that might not be the case. It might be more of a sideshow. Maybe something we don't do 15 times a year. Maybe it is only a few times a year, and that way it's more exciting. When you get too much of a good thing, it loses luster. I'm afraid that might be what kind of was going to happen. But we'll see. I mean, things are changing so fast. It's really hard to predict.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I would agree. The sad thing is that we just haven't seen any team formats. And so hopefully you're right, and they will bring some sort of all-star format. But, one of the things I like about MLP the most is, we see the top 10 guys. We've been watching them play and doing their thing. And to put them into I like the guys that are coming up, the CJ Klingers of the world, that are making a name for themselves. And, I don't know, maybe it's just an underdog story. I love the underdogs. I love the guys trying to play in and come up. And you're not going to see that if it's just an all-star event.
Well, you're not going to see that a lot in some of the PPA events, because it's so hard to break through to those quarterfinals, semifinals to be seen. MLP, it's more of an even playing field because all the teams are relatively even. At least that's kind of the theory, the way the draft works. But you get to see some in the Challenger League. You get to see some of these up and coming players that can go out and put on a show and make a name for themselves in a way to get better partners to do better in some of the PPA tournaments. I mean, you see like a Connor Garnett and the Christian Alshon, and they're in the Challenger League one season, and all of a sudden now they're top 10 in the world, and so they have an opportunity to work their way up. Where if you're in a PPA tournament and you keep losing first round, it's tough to really get noticed.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and speaking of Connor Garnett, I mean, so do you still watch singles and stuff, or do you watch a good bit of it?
I still enjoy watching. Yeah, I watched
Yeah.
this whole past Arizona tournament. I like watching the singles too. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to watch, because the athleticism of the guys that are playing singles now is so stupid. I mean, the way that,
Athleticism. Talk about Jack Sock.
yeah, I mean, that thing, he's got a cannon and he's hitting with that Lux. And if you've hit it, it's so soft.
He doesn't have to hit a backhand because he's so quick. For someone that big, I don't understand how he's that fast, because he's so quick. He can run around everything and hit a forehand and still recover. And it
Mm-hmm.
blows my mind. I'd be stretching for a backhand and he's already around it hitting a forehand.
Yeah. No, I remember watching you play 2 years ago in Orlando against Thomas Wilson when he was coming up trying to make a name for himself.
Sure, I remember that
And
match.
Steve Rose and I are standing on the court right on the side. And this is my favorite memory of Wilson is that Rose is rooting you on. He's your boy. He's like, let's go, Kyle. And he's being loud. And you beat him. And Thomas Wilson walks off, looks Steve right in the face and goes, where do you play?
Thomas is such a good guy. He did really well. He Vivian took a silver in
Mm-hmm.
mix, which behind Ben and Annalie, that's not bad at all. He's doing great after his heart condition, everything. To
Oh,
see
yeah.
him as well as he is, but I remember that match. Yeah, I never met him before, and I think we went 3 sets in singles,
Yeah.
and I ended up edging him out. But I remember we split games, and like I said, I'd never met him before, but he was like complimenting all my shots, laughing, having a good time. And I was like, this guy's got a good vibe about him. I mean, I'm beating him and he's still laughing. Then he's beating me and I'm still trying to be pretty respectful. And at the end of the match, he comes off and I thought, I would have assumed he would have been annoyed or frustrated. And he comes off and he's just laughing. He goes, dude, that was so much fun. Great match.
Oh, yeah. No,
That guy's
and
got
it was fun to watch. I That was my first taste of pro pickleball. That was the first time I've ever seen you guys
really.
play, and the difference between what I called good pickleball and what real pro pickleball was. Because I mean, that match was unbelievable, and it wasn't even on center court. And then you go over to center court and you play Ben, and another unbelievable match. But it really keys into one of the things I've noticed is that the pros, the guys that are, let's go, top 20, top 50 in the world, are head and shoulders above every other player out there. So like, I feel bad for these guys who are in the PPA play-ins and they're spending $500-600 trying to grind and get in. And I mean, if you're not Superman in your local state or area, you got no shot.
That's a funny way to put it. I do think it's interesting because you watch the pros player, you watch high-level pickleball, and it is hard to decipher the difference in skill levels. You watch and the points all look pretty good, so you see these good players and you think they're there, but then you look at the results of the tournaments and the same people are winning over and over and over again. Because there's just these little differences that make a difference at the end of the day. They're just winning a few more points here or there, making a few less errors, few better decisions, coming up with a few more clutch shots. But it's hard to tell from a viewer, a bystander, the difference in skill levels sometimes. But that's kind of what's so cool about the sport is anyone can play it and be competitive, but those top players just find ways to win. I feel like it's more of just a mental thing than anything else.
No, I definitely would agree. Well, and also even with the power paddles that are coming out and the tech, Ben and Colin just prove again and again that traditional pickleball can win. If you can force the guys into getting into a dink battle, if you can hit good drops, it's really hard to beat them if their hands are good enough to counter.
Ben's tough. Ben's a different animal. But the way he plays, they've got a strategy, and it's not unbeatable, but it's extremely difficult.
Yeah. So you played with Ben way back when he was coming up and you were the dog. He was begging you to play at the time. And was he so analytical about the game at that point? Has he always, because he's got that engineering brain, right?
He's a smart kid. He's smart kid. Actually, some sort of thing went out, and apparently he scored a 1550 on his SATs out of 1600. And I'm
Nice.
not surprised. I mean, he's a very good chess player. I mean, he's a really smart guy. You ask him to do a math problem. You ask him what's 67 times 243, and he'll just kind of look up for a second and then give you the answer. You're like,
Wow.
no way. You bring in a calculator, he's right. I mean, the kid's brilliant, but he's always been like that. And I remember when I first started playing with him, he was just kind of this big, kind of lazy kid, and he would kind of attack too often. And we talk a lot of strategy, and he once he started just figuring out the strategy, he would stick with it. He'd come up with a game plan, very cerebral, and say, all right, this player is really good at this, and this. If we do this or this, we should be fine. And we'd stick to game plan, and that would work. And pickleball, I mean, that's brilliant. Nowadays, it's really hard to come up with a strategy against some of these players because they don't have any weaknesses.
Mm-hmm.
But Ben finds any small advantage he could find, and he picks on it. And it's brilliant. It's tough.
Yeah, well, he was the first person that I heard of that has like a little black book on everyone, and you kind of dip into it, and that's so smart. I would never think to do that. That's just
For
not the
sure.
way my brain works.
And Colin's the same way. Colin really thinks about the game on another level too. So between the two of them, It's really hard to you come up with a game plan against them, and 5 points in, they've already figured it out and they know a counter to it.
Yes, not easy. Not easy. All right. So the first time I ever met you was a long time ago. I didn't play pickleball at the time. We went to Nicaragua down in God, I think it was 2016, 15, somewhere around there. And I'll never forget. Two random guys, but Rosie says, "Hey, Kyle's like number one in the world at pickleball," and I go, "Well, what is pickleball? That sounds cool." And we get there and we surf all week, and you were just learning at the time.
You were surfing all week. I was drowning all week.
Dude, you and Parker took the beatings like champions because those are not easy waves to learn on. But I mean, I think it's really cool that you've stuck with it and you've been surfing for a long time. And now the last time I surfed with you when we went to Costa Rica together, I mean, we charged 6 to 8 foot, like beautiful, perfect waves together, and you were crushing it. So I guess what I wanted to tell you that I've taken you up from a 3.5 surfer. You're now a 4.5, almost 5.0, because you can even go right.
A little bit. Working on it.
If I could just get my pickleball game up to like 5.0, then happy days.
Yeah. Well, I loved your interview with Steve Rose. So he taught me taught me surfing actually, but he invited me on that surf trip. Someone had told him that I was a big surfer, and I knew him through pickleball. And so he invited me. He said, "Hey, you want to go to a surf trip to Nicaragua with the boys?" I said, "Heck yeah, that sounds awesome. I want to go to Nicaragua with surfing." And we get down there, and we're just chit chatting. And he just casually just goes, "So, how long you been surfing?" And I never tried it. I thought it'd be fun. And he's like, look at fear because the waves, I mean, down there it was like 6 to 8 foot.
Yeah.
And so I just got hammered all week, didn't catch a single wave. But it was a great workout. I said, "Oh, this is I want to get this so bad." And
No, I was so impressed with you guys. You and Parker both just took, and I had to save Parker. You remember right out in front because he
his leash
lost his
broke.
board. But I mean, even at Asachio, where it's a beach break, it's a heavy beach break. You're hitting some sand.
It is steep and fast.
So when we went to Costa Rica, and hopefully I won't bore my listeners too much with surfing talk, but I did want to talk a little bit about it with you because I know it's something we both love. Um, was that normal for when you, because you go down there a lot on your pickleball vacations? Like I feel like we scored where it was 6 to 8 and like perfectly clean and beautiful. And
Dude, it's the spot. It's the spot. It's yeah. So we actually got 2 more weeks coming up. So the first 2 weeks of April, every year I go down to Costa Rica as like a U.S. Open prep, and I basically surf every morning. You know, it's like 5 a.m. to 8 a.m. every morning surf, 3 hours of pickleball, go take a nap, then you go surfing a little bit more, and then evening pickleball again. So it's like every day, 2 weeks straight. So I get in insane shape after the 2 weeks. But it's offshore winds like almost every day that
mm-hmm.
time of year. There's usually a pretty good swell, so we score almost every time. It's a great time.
That's unbelievable. I'm so jelly. Unbelievable. Well, and it's like a perfect training location for the US Open, and that all the balls get so squishy. It's hot as a mother down
Hot,
there.
hot and humid. Yeah, it's brutal. But yeah, I get to the US Open. I'm like, oh, this is nothing.
Oh yeah. So Kyle, I know that you play with the Valair, and it's your first carbon fiber paddle since playing with the paddle tech. Tell me a little bit about your relationship with those guys, and how you connected with them, etc.
Sure. So going into 2023, this was about January. I was working with Paddle Tech on a signature paddle, and it kept getting pushed back. They had submitted a paddle that I liked, it didn't get approved from USA Pickleball. It was too gritty. And I was urging them to go carbon fiber, but they were working on this iced carbon thing, a little different material. Long story short, they ended up, it just got delayed too long. And so I'm going into January. I had a tournament coming up in Punta Gorda, an APP tournament. And I said, you know what? I got to try something different. I need an upgraded paddle. I don't want to go 2023 again with an outdated model paddle. I needed to keep up with everyone else. And I just happened to be practicing with Julian Arnold at the time I got my text from the owner of Paddle Tech saying, "Hey, bad news. We're delayed a little bit longer." And I said, "Julian, let me try one of those paddles." He had his Valair Mach 1,
Mm-hmm.
and I hit with it. And I said, "Oh my goodness." Like it just, the carbon fiber, I'd never played with it before. The way it just grabbed where I was getting topspin, and he let me just have the paddle. A week and a half later, I played Punta Gorda with Andre
Hmm.
Descu, and we won gold. And I said, I'm using this paddle. But also then I started working with my own company PB 1965, trying to develop another paddle too. So I was using the Valera in the meantime, but I wasn't really planning on getting sponsored by them. I just liked the paddle, but I
Hmm.
was working on a signature paddle aside from it. A couple months go by, I'm still using the Valera, and I said, you know what? I like this paddle so much. I want to keep using it. So I finally reached out to Ryan Cohen with Valera, they're based out of California. I said, dude, I'm working on a signature paddle, but I love the Valera. I love the Mach 1. Is there anything you can do for me? And the guy's been so good to me. So they signed me, sent me some paddles, and said, yeah, I really want to make it a signature paddle. I said, that's what people have been telling me for years. And sure enough, 2 months later, the guy pulled it off. Absolutely gorgeous paddle. I got
Love
one
it.
right here, actually.
Yes, there you
Beautiful.
go. I
He's
love
so
it.
pretty. So just and I asked, he asked me a color, and I was like, what about like a neon green? He goes, I got something better. He goes, what about neon pink? I said, go for it. I
Yes.
said, right up my alley. And so this is the Forza, which is a newer model, the Mach 1. Actually like the 16 millimeter, just
Okay.
because it's got a little more pop than the original Mach 1.
It's a
Uh,
thermoform versus a Gen 1 paddle, right?
Right. And so it's got a little more pop. So I go to the 16 mil, and I just love the feel of this thing. So I'm super happy with it. So
So
yeah,
talk to me about like 16 mil versus 14 mil. Have you tried some of the thinner paddles? Because Valera makes a 14 miller too, right?
yeah, I used the Mach 114 because I like the pop. But like I said, when I got the Forza, it had the 14 and the 16, and I had just moved to Denver, and the altitude was really getting me. So I had the 14 mil, and I was hitting a lot of things long, and so I went to 16 for a little more control,
Hmm.
and I loved it. And I said, I'm gonna use the 14 if it's warm, the 16 if it's cool or an altitude. And honestly, it hits just as hard in the heat too. So I'm just using the 16 at all times really right now.
Yeah. I mean, after playing with a ton of paddles, I've figured out that I kind of like the 16 millimeter too. And I don't know if this is just in my brain or if there's real science behind it, but it almost feels like the 16 holds the ball a little bit longer
I
versus,
would say so.
popping off of the face really quickly.
I
And
would say
and that
so.
little bit of hold gives the extra bit of, for the rolls up at the net that you need for that spin and to get the ball down.
Sure, rolls, dings, blocks, you name it. It's just the control. The control is nice, and like I said, it Forza's got a little more pop than the original Mach 1. So I feel like it's got plenty of power for me, so the control was more important.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great paddle. Definitely good. And you talked earlier, I didn't even realize this, but you're associated with the Pickler and you've got some clubs and things going on. The Pickler is like taking over America right now.
Yeah, they just signed Drew Brees. So the Pickler indoor facility company based out of Utah, and I've always wanted to own my own pickleball facility. But being in Florida, there's so many pickleball courts. I felt like it was a little too saturated to do that. Then I saw Denver. There were some articles about outdoor courts getting shut down because of noise complaints and things like that. So I said, well, that might be a good spot to open some indoor facilities. So I went out to Denver, scouted around, and wanted to open my own place. And I just had a connection with Pickler and said, hey, is there any way I could, franchise with you guys? And they were only based in Utah. And gosh, this was about a year ago. And I don't know if you've heard lately, but they're expanding nationally. I mean, they're
Oh,
opening
big time.
100 more locations in the next year or two.
Are you
So
getting a piece of all those locations since you came up with that franchise idea?
yeah, I wish. I wish. But I've got Colorado locked in. So I'm actually planning to open operate a couple and sell and help other franchisees open theirs around Colorado. So I've been focused on that for the last 6 months or so, and I'm excited for what that holds.
Yeah, well, the majority of people that are playing pickleball, it's getting younger and younger, but there's still a lot of like 45 to 70 playing. And when it's super
Sure.
hot or super cold, it is no fun. And our indoor facilities are full year round up here.
Sure. Well, yeah. I mean, Colorado. It's even the summers are pretty nice, pretty sunny out, but it's usually windy, and the weather does change pretty fast. But all winter, I mean, it just snowed this morning. I don't like playing when it's 30 degrees out, so having indoor places is pretty nice. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's another state too that I feel like is so far behind in pickleball. I mean, Colorado has Olympic training centers for other sports and things. That pickleball, I didn't feel like it had a lot of facilities. Where coming from Florida, there's courts everywhere.
Yeah.
Arizona, California, Texas, there's all these facilities. Colorado is behind, so I feel like if I was able to open up some facilities or at least bring some more attention to pickleball in the state, it would just help the participation statewide. That's kind of my focus right now.
No, I mean, it seems really smart. You're sandwiched in between all those states that play a ton of pickleball and have a lot of high level play. So, yeah.
Sure. And another thing I'm passionate about too, I actually met with one of the school districts here near Denver to
Mm-hmm.
try to get pickleball in the PE classes because it's not really in the curriculum here yet.
Oh, no way.
The superintendent of the school district is coming out on Tuesday for our actual grand reopening of our facility. So they're going to come check out pickleball. We started a nonprofit to help gather and donate equipment, paddles, nets, balls, things like that to some local schools.
Okay.
So that's something I'm pretty passionate about, getting pickleball paddles in the hands of kids, which not a lot of kids in the state play yet. And I think that's a big missed opportunity. So I'm excited to help with that as well.
Man, I'm really glad to hear you're doing that because one of the things, like, if time were no object and I didn't have to go to my real job, I would love to coach up a high school pickleball team. Like right now,
Yes.
pickleball is being played in all the schools around Northern Virginia. So the good news is they have like a semester of pickleball and the kids love it. But the problem is there is no like pickleball club, there's no pickleball team, there's nowhere to go with it. So people see it as like a fun kind of sport you play in the gym. And I'd love to just scoop up some of those tennis players that are good and show them the real way through the pickle.
That's the vision. I mean, people are talking about getting pickleball in the Olympics or in colleges. I think just starting in PE, getting a pickleball club every middle and high school. That needs to start first, and I think a lot of states are getting there. And I'm excited to try to help Colorado get there as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and the cool thing is I just played in like an open cash tournament a couple of weeks ago. And I didn't know most of the names in there. And I show up going, all right, I got a shot. This is gonna be good. And who do I run into? But like two or three super high level college tennis guys who have now transitioned over. And I'm like, how long have you been playing? Oh, 6 months. And they smoke us. It's just
Sure.
like, oh, it, that is the world we live in these days.
Well, I look at the last PPA tournament. I mean, you got J Dub and Dylan and Gabe, and they're all under 20 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And Gabe's 17. None of them can drink alcohol yet. And that's where
I
the
don't even
sport's
think about
going.
that. That's hilarious.
All these kids growing up playing pickleball. I mean, funny story, Dylan Frazier. My uncle knew his parents way back in the day, and I actually called him, or I called his mother to talk to him when he was like 13 or 14. He just started playing pickleball, and I guess he had watched me play on CBS Sports US Open, and I just wanted to call him just to be nice, and because I just like seeing kids play, and I just want to encourage him. And I said, hey, if you have any questions for me ever, feel free to ask. I love that you're playing pickleball. I'll keep it up. And just trying to be nice. I didn't think the kid would be kicking my ass someday.
That is
And
amazing.
he was super inquisitive. Like he was asking, what drills should I do to get better? What should I focus on? Things like that. And I was like, man, this kid could be pretty good someday. He's asking the right questions. He's motivated, and he's got a good family around him. And now he's winning PPA tournaments. So I like cheering for him as well. It's a good family, but it's
Mm-hmm.
funny seeing these kids that when they're first starting, and then to see how much it's grown, it's really exciting. And who knows where sports going to be in another 5 years.
Oh, I can't wait to see. And I mean, outside of the US, I heard that India and China and some of those places might be like 2 years behind, but when they catch up, it's going to be crazy.
Yeah. Well, APP just had that tournament in India,
They
and like
did.
Andre Descu, Rob Nunnery, Ryler DeHart, some of those, Megan Fudge, they all went out and played it, which I think is awesome. Going out and
Mm-hmm.
supporting some of these other countries. I got to go to Europe a few years ago and help teach some clinics and play in the tournament over there, and they love it. They love it. They love it in Australia, India, China, Japan. Daniel Moore is doing stuff in Japan. So you need these kinds of people to go out abroad and help promote it, because you have these people in these other countries starving for more pickleball,
Mm-hmm.
and they just need a little bit of help. People are going out there doing it. So kudos to those people going out and helping with that.
Yeah, and one of the overlooked areas is Canada too. Canada's got a huge pickleball community. I think 10% of my views come out of Canada, which is wild to me.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, Kyle, man, I really appreciate you taking some time with me. I love picking your brain, and I hope for amazing and great things for the rest of the year, for your future. And I really need to see you on the court again. So let's kick some ass at US Open. I'll be watching, rooting for you. Who are you playing with, by the way?
I'm playing with William Sobek.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I've been dodging him for a while, but another kid that I've known since he was, 11, 12 years old playing pickleball. So I'm playing great. I'm excited to play with him, I'm excited to get out in the water with you again soon.
Yeah, well, I definitely need to get back to Costa Rica, and that's something that I'll throw out a text to you later on about, but definitely need to get in the water.
Sure. Well, if anyone else interested in going to Costa Rica, you can check out pbplaycations.com.
Yeah, you've got a couple of spots on your upcoming ones left, right?
Got a few more spots, but we go every year, so if you can't make it this year, there's always another opportunity.
And it is one of the best trips I've ever been on. Not only because I like to surf the beautiful wave there, but because there's monkeys running around. The food is amazing. The people are amazing. The whole setup is just top notch.
It's a great spot. I can't wait.
Kyle, enjoy your evening, dude. Great talking with you.
You're the man. Thanks, Brian.
Yep. See ya.